pay-per-view match is supposed to be the one that fans want to spend their hard-earned money to see. A bout that had been built up as a huge deal with the promise of delivering something extra special that you simply can't see on free TV. Supposed to be, anyway, because it doesn't always work out like that. In fact, some WWE pay-per-view matches have been so shambolic that I've turned off the telly adamant that Vince McMahon should have really increased my bank balance just for sitting through them. I'm talking zombies, old blokes in drag, and plenty of Big Boss Man. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are the 10 biggest WWE pay-per-view match disasters. Join us. Number 10, D-Generation X versus the Brothers of Destruction at Crown Jewel 2018. Kane and The Undertaker taking on Shawn Michaels and Triple H would have been an incredible match in 1998. Hell, it probably would have still been pretty decent in 2008. In 2018, however, it's a bout that had bad idea written all over it. All four men are legends, but by the time they met at Crown Jewel, they were all past their primes, working part-time, and one of them had been retired for the best part of a decade. It was, to be polite, an absolute horror show, and a match that played out like a parody. Things weren't helped by Triple H suffering a torn pectoral muscle early on and having to gut it out for the rest of the long match with a very painful injury. But everything was off on the night. The timing and chemistry just weren't there, and several moves and spots were badly blown. At one point, Kane's mask just fell off his face. Just fell right off. Ridiculous. It became an embarrassment to watch, and everyone involved looked relieved when the whole thing finally came to a merciful end. I'm sure the 7-figure payoffs helped though. Number 9, Alexa Bliss versus Randy Orton at Fastlane 2021. It was hard to choose just one terrible match involving either Bray Wyatt / The Fiend or Alexa Bliss, but I've had to go for this abomination from Fastlane 2021. The supernatural silliness has its audience, sure, but that audience is primarily children under the age of 10 who haven't seen a proper horror film. No offense to anyone who forked over for a Fiend replica belt, of course. For almost everyone else though, it is nails on a chalkboard viewing, and we just pray that nobody else walks into the room while it's on. WWE obviously felt comfortable presenting such drivel, since fans were not yet back to watch the shows in person. How else could they have a match that started with the Viper vomiting up black goo and included such hits as Alexa summoning a wall of fire and making a light fall from the Thunderdome ceiling? The ending was eye-roll inducing too, as the charred corpse of the Fiend emerged from beneath the ring like a low-rent Jason Voorhees and hit the Sister Abigail to hand Little Miss Bliss the victory. Number 8, The Ultimate Warrior versus Goldust at In Your House Good Friends, Better Enemies. Feeling the pressure of the Monday Night Wars, WWE brought back the Ultimate Warrior in 1996 on a big fat contract that gave him plenty of preferential treatments. Warrior repaid them by putting in minimal effort, from his return squash bout with Hunter Hearst Helmsley at WrestleMania 12 to his series of matches with Jerry Lawler and Goldust, which included some of the most pathetic WWE pay-per-view matches ever. It should be noted that Dustin Runnels had a knackered knee going into their match at In Your House Good Friends Better Enemies, and that he was basically told to tape it up and get on with it, which obviously didn't help things. He was also Intercontinental Champion, and WWE clearly didn't want to take the title off or beat him properly at this point, so you knew that a screwy finish was coming. The first 5 minutes, yes, 5, were basically Warrior smoking a cigar in the ring while Goldust and his crew, wife Marlene and an unnamed bodyguard played by the former Mantar, stalled on the floor. 7.5 minutes in, we were treated to a first offensive move, and 20 seconds after that, the match was over, as the bizarre one was counted out. Number 7, Kronic versus the Brothers of Destruction at Unforgiven 2001. Despite what some may tell you, Kronic were, in fact, awesome. Brian Adams and Brian Clark came together at the tail end of WCW to wreak havoc on the company's tag division and were genuinely one of the best parts of the show at the time. They finally showed up for the invasion a few months in and, led by Stevie Richards, targeted the Brothers of Destruction. What should have been an epic hoss fight between two teams of behemoths at Unforgiven 2001 turned out to be Kronic's second and final WWE match. It was a major styles clash, and Kronic, who likely had a fair bit of ring rust to work out and were also carrying injuries, looked lost out there, being out of position for much of Kane and Taker's offense and doing a less than stellar job of selling. You could read clearly on the dead man's face just what he thought of the botch-filled bout, and he reportedly had stern words for his opponents backstage afterwards. The upshot was both Adams and Clark were asked to report to WWE Developmental immediately following the match. Adams agreed while Clark quit in protest. Number 6, The Miz versus Damian Priest at WrestleMania Backlash. As an actual match, you know, the wrestling parts, The Miz vs. Damian Priest's lumberjack offering at WrestleMania Backlash wasn't a colossal blunder filled with glaring mistakes or anything. It was what it was, not outright terrible, not great, not even good, just sort of there. What gets this one onto the list is the fact that the Lumberjacks were played by zombies. The whole charade was a vehicle to promote upcoming Netflix film Army of the Dead, starring none other than former WWE champion Dave Bautista. Still, this was the pandemic era and fans weren't even in the building yet, so WWE felt comfortable turning a grudge match into a commercial for the film, having been paid by the studio to do so. Priest won, and the zombies, who were polite enough to stay in their designated ringside area for the duration of the contest, devoured Miz and John Morrison after the fact. Sure, fine, whatever. Number 5, The Big Boss Man vs. The Undertaker at WrestleMania 15. Expectations were high going into The Undertaker and Big Boss Man's Hell in a Cell match at WrestleMania 15. After all, the first two proper ones had been classics, and the Dead Man had been involved in both of those. In the first, he and Shawn Michaels set the standards with an epic for the ages, and in the second, Mick Foley had turned in one of the most incredible performances in any match in history. So, what were the Phenom and the man from Cobb County, Georgia going to pull out to live up to that legacy, on the grandest stage of them all, no less? Nothing, as it turned out. They did nothing but plod around and do some weak brawling for 10 uninspired and hugely disappointing minutes. It didn't even have much blood, as the colour Taker got was weaker than a Ric Flair nosebleed. It didn't help that both were heels and the Russo-penned storyline going in was confusing, resulting in a noticeable lack of heat. But still, neither man put the effort in here, and the Cell gimmick was totally wasted. Adding insult to injury, the post-match angle where the Brood hanged Bossman from a noose attached to the Cell was deeply insulting. Number 4, Jerry Lawler vs. Michael Cole at WrestleMania 27. Much was made of Jerry Lawler's lack of WrestleMania moment in the run-up to his match against fellow announcer Michael Cole at the 27th edition of the event. After it was all over, I'm guessing he wishes it had stayed that way. Considering Cole is not a wrestler and Lawler works a very specific style that requires a competent dance partner, it was never going to be a classic. But after ages of Cole tormenting the King, it could have at least been a definitive feel-good ending to their feud, which did have a lot of heat. It would have been fine if Jerry just batted him around for a minute or two, hit the second rope fist drop, won, and then fed Cole to special referee Steve Austin for a stunner and beer bath. Instead, it was 14 odd minutes of pathetic wrestling that felt like 50, with Cole being completely lost out there and not having a clue what to do. Worse still, the match had a dusty finish, as Lawler seemingly won only for the anonymous Raw general manager to overturn the result. Number 3, The Big Boss Man vs. Al Snow at Unforgiven 1999. 6 months after Bossman participated in the worst Hell in a Cell match to that point in history, someone decided it would be a grand idea to put him in the environment once again. Not just back in the same environment, oh no, but in a cell match that also had the old blue steel cage inside of it and, oh yeah, a pack of vicious Rottweilers patrolling the ringside area. The Kennel from Hell match was a bastardized creation that probably sounded good to somebody on paper. It's a gimmick on top of a gimmick, bro, but it was a downright disaster in execution. The objective was to make your way out of both enclosures without the dogs ripping you to shreds, but these dogs weren't interested in dinner time. They were interested in humping each other and their trainers and going toilet on the floor. The action itself was dismal, as they apparently didn't know how to work this thing, not that I blame them, and it died a death in front of the live crowd. Number 2, Gerald Brisco vs. Pat Patterson at King of the Ring 2000. In their day, Gerald Brisco and Pat Patterson were two highly respected and accomplished pro wrestlers. By the turn of the new millennium, however, they were older and, true to form, were duly turned into walking jokes by WWE. As Vince McMahon's stooges, they were great value and added plenty of entertainment to WWE programming. But things took a turn when WWE booked them into a feud over the Hardcore title, culminating in a Hardcore evening gown match at King of the Ring 2000. This whole thing really felt like it was done for the benefit of a small circle of people in upper management who found it hilarious, because it certainly wasn't entertaining or enjoyable for fans in the arena or those paying for the privilege at home. The Hall of Famers were out there in wigs, bad makeup, and ill-fitting dresses, and basically stumbled around like two drunks outside of a kebab shop on a Saturday night. Crash Holly mercifully ran in to put a stop to things after just over 3 painfully unfunny minutes, stripping the Stooges down to their lingerie, naturally, before bonking Patterson on the head with a bin and winning the title due to the 24/7 rule. I can almost hear the guffawing from the gorilla position, you know? Number 1, Goldberg vs. The Undertaker at Super Showdown 2019. What was supposed to be an Attitude-era dream match turned into a nightmare on foreign soil. Not only was Goldberg vs. The Undertaker at Super Showdown a Saudi shocker as far as match quality goes, but it could have ended the Phenom's career. The match actually started off well enough, as Goldberg hit 2 huge spears right out of the chute, and they teased a couple more big moves before Goldberg went for spear number 3, missed, and collided with the ring post. And I mean really collided. Big Bill was knocked loopy and busted open from the impact, and honestly, the match should have been finished there and then. Because not too long after, Goldberg attempted a jackhammer and dropped Taker right on his head and neck in a terrifying moment. After the injury, the action itself was really weak and sad to watch, but the ugly botch woke everyone up to the severity of the situation as it unfolded. They soldiered on a little longer, with Goldberg falling over as he tried a tombstone of his own before Taker hit the real deal, spiking his opponent's head into the mat as well. Never again, please.